Item 7.3, which is an update on the 2025 implementation plan. Robert.
Right, I'll try to keep this quick. So obviously we're required to have an annual implementation plan under the National Policy Statement Urban Development. We also wanted to bring more of a longer term view of what our priorities were as a future-proof partnership into that plan in its drafting. What I've done, well, we started to prepare a plan, but your chief executives gave us some feedback that it was, again, a bit dense and boring and needed to be more attractive. And so I am not in a position to present you with a draft plan today. What I've gone in the report is wandered through and documented the things that we need to change in the plan, and to try to pick up on what our priorities are likely to be or should be for the next triennium. The view of the chief executives was that we should focus on completing the work we've started, so the spatial studies, the retirement villages study, and to really focus our efforts on making sure we're able to resource responding to the fast track developments, and preparing future-proof for integration into some regional spatial plan once we know what the form and shape of that thing is. So those need to be what we reflect as our priorities for the next 3 years, given by if the legislative program runs as we expect it to, the region will be expected to adopt a regional spatial plan that does a lot of the stuff the future-proof strategy does in 2028. So our thinking is, what can we do to set this sub-region up for that? And in paragraph 18, I set out what I see as the priorities for the work program in that context. So this is in addition to supporting, completing what we started and supporting the fast track stuff and continuing to deliver the Metro Spatial Plan Transport business case. We need to go back and sharpen up our vision and transformational moves for the sub-region. So what are our priorities for the sub-region that we would want to see reflected in a regional spatial plan or a regional deal? We need to keep building the story map that we presented to you, because it becomes a key focal point for supporting our story about why the government should invest in our region. We should continue the work that you've asked me to look into about how we better align our spatial planning with economic development and infrastructure investment attraction. And we should rethink how we deliver all of the analytical data that's required to support a spatial plan. And that's the housing and building capacity assessment. Those of you who are on the Future Development Strategy Hearings Committee will recall that the model we had was reliant on consultants. The consultants delivered our housing and building capacity assessment midway through the hearings process, which is not really ideal for a strategy process. We think we can do that a lot better by delivering that product in-house. And so the action on paragraph 18D is to look at how we could gear up to deliver all of that functionality in-house with our existing staff resources. So we're starting work on that as a priority for the next year. I think that's enough, Bill, in terms of the report. Oh, actually, no, because you asked me to talk to it. That's right. The table appended to my table is the much more detailed work program defined for the transport program business case delivery, which has gone through the PT subcommittee and needs to be incorporated into the implementation plan. What I note about this program is that we're really working off 3 funding sources at the moment. Hamilton City Council and Waikato Regional Council have committed in their annual plans some funding for ongoing implementation of the transport program business case. We have no NZTA funding, but Futureproof does have some of these projects are ones Futureproof can fund from our resources. And so that's where you see the other budget column. That's basically where Futureproof budgets will be used to progress work like supporting some of the Cambridge Connections work, and supporting some looking at the transport strategy for that North Waikato area that I talked about earlier.
Thanks, Robert. And just before I open it up, I've added into recommendation 3, which is on page 81 of the agenda and on the screen in italics, just an addition and ensuring that the final plan clearly reflects the priorities defined by the committee. So it was just sort of closing that loop. So I will open it up for questions and comments. Liz.
Yeah, look, I heard the quickly go through the report. So, look, I think you've done a great job actually on this, and I'm particularly interested, I suppose, to see the next 3 years, the great work that can be done. There's a lot of change in the environment, okay, and I think you've tried to capture as much as you possibly can. Knowing that probably in 6 months' time you're going to have to, potentially make tweaks to it. So as it is, I think it's perfectly fine for what we were at and what we're hoping to see in the future.
And I might add, there's the plan doesn't have any statutory basis, so it can be changed essentially at any time if the committee so decides. Anything else? Doesn't appear to me. Okay. We'll move to the 3 recommendations: to receive the report, approve the updates, and
Happy to move.
okay, and the third one is in terms of me actioning the approved changes in the new version. Okay, been moved by Liz. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, I'm happy to second it and also just
Yeah,
comment
okay.
on the format of the papers. Quite enjoying
Okay.
It just
Good.
seems different from when I first started, or maybe it's just a change, but I do like the bullet type.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, I think there's been a bit of listening in terms of when 3 years ago and to where we are now.
Yeah.
So. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. There's no further discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. And well done, Robert and the team, on all of that. The last item in the open, 7.4, is my chair's report. I'm going to take most of that as read. I would like to just highlight, particularly under the achievements and acknowledgements, and this is more about the acknowledgements. I think, from my perspective, this has been a great triennium in terms of the Future Proof Implementation Committee. And I think of when we started and where we are now, the nature of the discussions, the whole respectful and collaborative approach that those around the table have taken. And certainly that's made my job as chair a lot easier. In fact, I'd be as far as to say it's probably been one of the best trienniums I've had the pleasure to chair for the Implementation Committee. And I do, and there's always a danger when you highlight people, but I have in paragraph 5 highlighted Regional Chair Pamela and Mayors Susan, Paula, Adrian and Jackie. So certainly been a pleasure to work with you, but I think in terms of how you've come together and actually given life to the partnership and walking the talk. So really just wanted to acknowledge that. And that collaborative governance leadership's key, and it's going to be even more key going into the next 3 years. So I have my own concerns in terms of next month, but so be it. And the other thing, and I've noted through in terms of those who have been around the table and have left us, etc., etc. I'd just like to highlight, though, Robert as advisor and Lyndall as coordinator in terms of keeping all this together. That is no mean feat. And certainly I feel for Lyndall when we've had some technology issues with very important people, might add. But certainly the machinery and keeping the partnership moving and all of that's absolutely key. As is WRC is administration authority. And I'd just like to acknowledge Liz as Deputy Chair during this triennium. Finally, I'd like to, before I get to that, a couple of other acknowledgements. Certainly, Nanaya, I'd just like to acknowledge you and Nakaro Atua Otiwaka in terms of their input and contribution and involvement. For what has now been a long period of time since establishment of the strategy, but certainly in the last 3 years. And I'd also like to acknowledge Mayor Paula. We had at the end of our meeting with the Minister Bishop last week, so had an opportunity with Paula's fellow mayors in the regional chair to acknowledge her contribution around the future-proof table. She has been on the journey when Ken Tremaine and I were developing the scoping report for future-proof way back in 2007. So in one form or another, Paula has been involved in that. And obviously, she's been a member of the committee when she was at the Regional Council, and obviously latterly as a councillor and mayor at Hamilton City. So it's just in terms of those 24 years of contribution, but in particular in terms of those 16 years of contribution to the future-proof partnership. And as I noted last week, and she was never hesitant in coming forward if the focus was too much just on the managing growth component without the recognition in terms of, okay, how are we dealing and managing the environment and the mitigation and the effects of growth. So she's often been in that space and reminding us that, that's an equally important part of the equation. So just thanking her and been on that journey for such a long period of time. And then really finally, in terms of, it has been a great strategic thinking collaboration that has been provided around this table in the last 3 years. Credit to all of those involved. And as I've noted, it's been a real pleasure to be your chair during that period of time. Okay, I'll take any questions or comments on my report.
You go. You can do it, Angela. I just I think just looking at everybody, really want to just really applaud your leading this group. Sometimes you feel like you're probably herding cats, and that's where with the team getting in behind that. But it has been an interesting journey, and for a lot of us, it's our first time being involved. So just appreciate your leadership, Bill, and really want to give them a clap.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And we'll see what next month brings. Okay. Well, there's nothing further. There's a recommendation there to receive the report. Been moved by Mayor Susan, seconded by Angela. Nothing further, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. So now we'll move into PX. Okay, thanks, Mayor Adrian. I'll second that. Nothing further, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Pause.